Midwest sirens, but it's not testing day. I guess it is. Well, happy Severe Weather Awareness Week, everyone. I don't know if you can hear, but the tornado sirens are going off in the backyard. There are definitely not tornadoes happening right now. We're all fine here. Also, my heat just kicked on, and the coffee maker is going, and the laundry machine is going. So let's hope there's not just a cacophony of background sounds this time. Welcome back to the RF Fitness Podcast, brought to you by rffitness.net, your source for online coaching built for and by busy grown-ups just like you who are on the quest for health and strength in everyday life. I am unsure why I'm talking that way. I'm also your host, Rob Finlayson, certified older brother, fitness coach, and anxiety dad. And I'm not here with a co-host. This is a ranter with no banter episode. Rob Solo Sode here. I want to talk a little bit about success, how we define it basically, and how you set yourself up for success as it pertains to fitness, obviously, but as I guess you could probably take this and run with it in almost anything else. Earlier today, hit training session number 70 of the 292 that I want to get done this year in 2025. Yesterday was number 69, which was pretty nice. But I want to be very clear on my language on this, that I say training session, not workout, because there's a difference. So a workout obviously is, I mean, you know what a workout is. I don't have to define that to you. But a training session is a discrete and intentional event in which I partake in planned behaviors that bring me closer to my goal that I do repeatedly. So oftentimes, most often, that is a workout or a class of jiu-jitsu. Some days it's a really long walk with the dog. And some days it's taking a nap because my body super duper needs to sleep for 45 extra minutes that day than I need to swing a kettlebell. Some days, there's been days where it's just food prep. That's my training session for the day. For my quest group, my questies, I have a training session for them that is just food prep every Sunday. Make a sheet pan of vegetables, brown a bunch of beef, cook up a rotisserie chicken, whatever, and stick that in the fridge. And, that takes a lot of time and effort, and you do it regularly, and it brings you closer to your goals. So that's a training session. And it's not the event itself is the other thing. So why count these things as training sessions if they're not workouts? Like, what's the difference? What does this have to do with success? Well, success comes into momentum, or success. 69, got it. Success creates momentum. I guess failure creates momentum as well, just in the opposite direction. I talked about this in my last solo episode about the momentum spectrum. People, like I said in the last episode, people are always asking, like, how do I get my momentum back? Like, how do I get my motivation up? That kind of thing. Motivation spectrum, that was it. How do I keep my motivation up? Nothing is more motivating than success, than winning a lot. I want to keep doing the thing that I keep doing really good at. It feels good to be good at things, and it feels good to win. And when it feels good to do the thing, you want to keep doing that thing. So in order to kind of, I don't want to say hack, but in order to set myself up for success, I sometimes need to have a flexible definition of success. And that flexible win state is really what I want to talk about today. Some days when I don't have other things that equal to my training session, taking a nap or doing the thing, or I didn't get a full workout in, I'll do 50 kettlebell swings and I'll check that box and call it a training session, because it's more than I did, and it did take effort, and it does get me closer to my goals. Now, is 50 swings enough to stimulate a training response physiologically? Probably not. Not really. It's such a small amount of resistance, such a small dose of stress that in the grand scheme of things, it's not going to add up to much unless you do it pretty often, which is one way to get that done. But I think I say it quote unquote checks the box because it is more of a mental exercise for me I did the thing today. It was, again, intentional. It took a lot of effort. When you have a day and the only thing you can fit in is 50 swings, it's going to take a lot of effort to make those 50 swings happen. It's kind of like a weird backwards momentum thing where, like, the more hard it is to get the thing done, the less we have to do for it to really count. I don't know. There's an algorithm in there somewhere about that, I'm sure. I digress. The point I'm trying to make here is that checking the box is sometimes all it takes, and I think is often the most important thing. I've talked about this. Like in the beginning, when I set this goal for 292 sessions in the beginning, the whole point of that was to make as many instances as possible that will get me towards progress or build towards progress. And my whole thought process behind that was that just having so much frequency will force the results that I want to appear. And I think it's working so far. Like I said, I'm only 70 and I'm a little bit behind where I'd like to be. But this week in particular, has been pretty good. I mean, just overall, it's been a great week. But multiple times I've gotten reactions from people or sort of heard things, seen data that leads me to believe that, like, yes, a positive change, like the results that I want, which was getting stronger, getting better at jujitsu, achieving a quote wow physique, which is kind of intentionally vague, but like, when you see it. All these were my goals at the beginning of the year that I set out in that episode, and I think I'm getting there. Like on, was it Monday? Monday. This is where I just get to talk about how awesome I am for a couple of minutes. So please indulge me or skip ahead. So on Monday, I went to the coffee shop, the Lodestone Coffee and Games on Cedar Lake Road. Go there if you like games, board games, magic cards, or really good coffee. And I was there and I was getting coffee before work. And I was talking to the barista behind the counter. She was saying, we were talking about like me being a personal trainer, and she's talking about how she wants to get back into working on all this stuff. And she was saying, like, yeah, now that I'm 26, I think she said, now that I'm 26, I need to really start like investing in the future of my body. Like because like it's nice, we're gonna get older and like things get harder and like your back starts to hurt. And she's, saying all this stuff that everyone knows happens when you get older. And I made a joke like, oh yeah, I've been down that road for about 10 years now. I'm 37 and it really doesn't get any easier. And she was like flabbergasted. And there was another barista behind the counter at the same time. And he was gape mouthed at me. And they both said, there's no way you're 37. Like I would have said you're 28 at the most. And that blew me away. And I gave her an extra $1 in the tip jar. So take that for what you will. But, diet and exercise, get all your vitamins and minerals, and a healthy, youthful exuberance for life, I think is really helpful for appearing and feeling very youthful. And then we had a great conversation about Dolly Parton. But that was just one thing. On Tuesday, I went in to get onboarded for the new job that I'm starting next week at the YMCA, my old new job that I'm starting again at the YMCA. Manager said, we're going to have to get you a uniform shirt. What size shirt do you wear? And I said, I usually wear a medium. And he kind of eyes me up and down, and I can see his eyes like scan my shoulder line. And he's like, I think you need a large, which felt pretty cool because I don't need to fill out a large usually. I guess unless it's the past like year and a half or so, where I have to be very particular about what size of shirt that I wear because I'm just getting too fucking broad to fit into a lot of my old shirts. And that sounds like a boast, and it is, but it sucks because a lot of my favorite shirts fit me like child shirts now. And I hate that so much. And then earlier today and yesterday in jiu-jitsu, guys were telling me like your grip is weirdly strong, like you're very strong, which in jiu-jitsu, if you do that, is kind of a backhanded compliment, like, oh, you're so strong. The inference there is that you're so strong you don't have to be good at jiu-jitsu. But I think, especially in a sport like grappling, strength is a technique because it takes a lot of practice to get there, and you have to have the experience to know when, where, and how to apply it. And there are wrong times and wrong ways to apply it. So that makes it a technique. to me. The Kimura is my favorite technique to use, but it's not appropriate for every single situation. And I have to know when and how to approach it, how to get there. Using strength and athleticism is a fallback technique of mine, apparently. But you have to know when and where and how to do it. But like people were saying, like you got that iron personal trainer grip. So that was pretty cool to hear. But suffice to say, if you're skipping ahead now, you can start listening again instead of hearing me talk about how awesome I am. Suffice it to say, just not even following like there's no secret program that I'm doing. There's no like, this is the exact thing. Like, I've been doing XYZ for 1, 2, 3 every single week and I'm hitting 6 meals a day or whatever. I don't like, that's not how I am. That's not who I am. I'm 37. I have a child. I now have a second, technically a third job, right? Like I don't have time to follow this sort of bodybuilder approach to my physical life, to my physical training. It really comes down to those two things, which is frequency and to achieve that frequency, having that flexible win state. Because again, if I had a very strict, rigid definition of success, that means you also if you have a very narrow definition of success, you are giving yourself an extremely wide definition of failure. Because you're dealing with binaries here, right? I like that. I'm going to say that again. If you are giving yourself a very narrow definition of success, you are giving yourself an extremely wide definition of failure. And failure doesn't really build progressive momentum. It doesn't get you where you want to. Obviously, failure doesn't work. Did you know that, guys? I'm so good at this. It does. I'm talking more psychologically, I guess, at this point. Like if I feel like I just fucked up all week, I'm not gonna have the juice to come back and try again, but if I need a prop. If I can set, here we go. If I can set a line, this is my finish line. If I can set this line of success and I can pull it like that, if I can only get to here and I can pull that line of success down to there and pass that line, even if it's just for one day, one session, whatever it takes to check that box, I'm allowing myself to make that success happen, to psychologically give myself the advantage tomorrow and later this week to come back and try again. If my 100% today, my full effort today really looks like 68% for my most of the time, and I still do it, I have to check that box to give myself grace, basically, to say, this works for today. Tomorrow, do it again, but better. Tomorrow, do it again, but better. The next day, do it again, but better. And someday you won't be able to do it better. And you'll again have to move that line to say, I did what I could today. That has to count. That just has to be enough for today. It's very temporary. I think that especially as millennials, because I'm assuming if you're listening to this, you are one or you know one. You know at least one because you're listening to me. Especially as millennials, I think we have this complex about our work ethic, I guess. We've been told our whole lives that we're this participation trophy generation. But I mean, one, who's giving those fucking participation trophies to fuck us up, apparently? And two, I don't know anyone who's like that in my age range. All millennials I know are working our fucking asses off all the time and basically seeing nothing for it. But that's that's a different type of rant I'm going to get into later. But so what I'm saying here is that when I say we are moving the line of success, when we are having this flexible definition of success, this flexible win state, what I'm not saying is that thinking really hard about it counts and you win and you get a participation trophy for that. No, I'm not saying celebrate mediocrity. I'm saying you have to be able to have a long enough view to know what's really important. Is it that you hit a PR on your bench press every week? Or is it that you're making enough effort consistently, repeatedly enough that you're going to see the changes, see the adaptations that you want to see? And you could apply this, again, not just to fitness, but to anything. Let's say, I don't know, political action. It doesn't have to be a perfect action every time. Your solution that you come to the table with doesn't have to be flawless. Your action just has to matter at all, and then you need to apply it many times. That's how change happens. I'm doing this. I'm shrugging into the camera a lot. Like, what more do you want me to say? I don't think I could be any clearer. So to give you some actionable intel on this, one thing that I wanted to cover that I had talked about in an Instagram post from like 2 years ago that just popped up on my memories was to toss your potions. And this is a conversation that I had with a client a while back that I thought was really, really insightful, that we kind of came to the same arrival at the same time here. And that's to toss your potions. This client was having a lot of trouble because they wanted to, lose weight, but it's hard because they have a family, or they've got a spouse and 2 kids, and they want to eat certain things in the house. Their mom comes over from out of town, and mom brings all these treats that you normally don't keep in the house because you're trying to lose weight, and it's like really hard. I'm like, this is my strategy for it as well. Just don't have it in the house. It's not a matter of willpower or motivation or being good. Another whole conversation. It's not a matter. I don't have to think about it if it's just not in the house. If I don't keep Oreos in my pantry, I'm never going to overeat on Oreos because they're just not around. And that's the problem that this client was having. Like, mom comes over, she brings cake. And then, when mom's in town, she eats a piece of cake, and then the kids don't like it. Spouse doesn't like it. I love this type of cake. Now it's just sitting in my fridge, fucking staring at me every time I open the fridge. What do I do? And the conversation we had to have, and this client, I love them so much, such a Midwesterner. I can't throw food out. You can and you should when it's like this. And I said, it feels like tossing your potions in a video game, in Skyrim, which we've all played, which I've played a lot, but it's any game where you have an inventory. You have a tendency to accrue items that, like potions, health potions or mana potions, potions of whatever, they just take up space in your pockets, and you never use them, and you don't throw them out because you're like, well, I might need that later. I might, that's the same reason we wind up with so much shit around the house. I might need that later. Talk to me and Rachel about our dad. I might need that later. You won't. If you don't need it in like a week, you can just get rid of it. That's the thing, especially with food, because it does go bad. But things in your, a lot of this food that it doesn't bring you towards your weight loss goal also tends to have a very long shelf life. That's something we could explore sometime. So just don't keep it around, have compost. That was honestly getting a compost bin. And I understand that this is not an option for everyone, but I think especially around Minnesota and Minneapolis where we live, where a lot of my clients and listeners are, I think it's a pretty available option. You just have to look into it with your city, with your waste collection city. You can probably go on your city's website. Getting compost as part of our trash pickup was so huge for me. I might have talked about this on the show because I was going through very real mental anguish about throwing away food, wasting food, especially with a young kid. And I'll make the food and she eats one bite of an orange. It's it's yucky. I hate it. And then we got 3 months of oranges are off the menu and I have all these oranges. Now what do I do with all these fucking oranges? Because when you throw them away, obviously you're just wasting money, and it's bad. It's really bad for the environment to throw food away, guys. Please don't do it. So, and if you have this food, if you have this cake, or you have these Oreos, you have this whatever in your fridge, you need to get rid of it. You can either get rid of it by giving it away to someone, bringing it to work, just leaning way too far and just eating it all yourself and doing a big nasty binge, smoke the whole pack at once, or dump it into the compost bin. And as the way I word it to Olivia, give it back to the earth, because it obviously goes different ways. So, and that helps a lot, I think, because especially for this particular client who's very green, very gardeny, very, earth minded like I am, which I really, really appreciate. They said that's a really good idea. If I give it back to the earth, and I don't have to feel as bad. Mom who brought the cake doesn't have to feel bad either because she's out of town. She saw me eat the piece of cake. This is the love language, whatever. I've eaten it. Thank you, mother. I have enjoyed the cake. Now I can give it back to the earth instead of me eating it. Mom doesn't have to know the podcast. It's fine. But yeah, that's a way to decrease temptations, decrease unneeds. I believe it was Bruce Lee who said, "It is not about the daily increase, but the daily decrease," cutting away from your life that which is unnecessary to leave only the essential. And with food and potions, tossing them, many things in my life, I have found that cutting away at the unnecessary has been extremely helpful. And I hope that you can do the same. If you do need some help, let me know. Hit me up in the Discord. You know what it is. Adjust those environmental stressors as much as you can, guys. I know it's not easy, especially right now. I have a whole other episode I want to talk about my mental health and how that's going, because the answer, spoiler alert, it's not always great. It's not always great. This week was different. This week was great. Anyways, guys, I want to tell you guys, touch iron, be kind, keep questing, and I'll see you in the next one.